to share a short welcome message from the Vice President of the Alumni Association, Jenn Heisey. So I will go ahead and share that with you all now.
Welcome to today's program, one of many offered by your UC Alumni Association. Before we begin, it's important for me to say thank you for joining us. By actively participating in our offerings and experiences, you are harnessing the power of your alumni network. There are Bearcats all over the world, more than 315,000 alumni in 127 countries, which makes virtual programs like this so rewarding. These challenging times do come with a silver lining. We are more connected than ever before, creating boundless opportunities. The University of Cincinnati and each of you is stronger and better positioned because of our lifelong connections through our alma mater. We love providing opportunities like this one, where alumni can learn, network, and give back. So settle in and enjoy today's program. And if you like what you hear today, please share on social media using the hashtag #ThyLoyalChildren. Thanks again for joining us. Go Bearcats.
Okay, so now, like I mentioned, thank you all for joining us for the UCYP 2008-2009 grad panel discussion. We are very excited to have Larry Hodge, who is a CECH 2009 grad, Shantia Pearson, who is also a CECH 09 grad, Jenn Schuster, a 2008-2009 graduate of the Linder College of Business, as well as Sean Lee, who's a 2009 graduate of the College of Business as well, join us today. So I will go ahead and pass it off to the panelists to let them introduce themselves, give a little bit of background, and then we can start with questions from there. Larry, would you like to go ahead and start?
Sure. Can everybody see me and hear me? Good. Good morning. My name is Larry Hodge. I'm a graduate of the College of Education, 2009. I actually was afforded the opportunity to go to the university on a scholarship, which was aimed at providing African-American teachers into the inner city public schools. Currently, well, actually, I'll say this. I've taught for a little while in the public school sector, taught at charter schools, and now my work is primarily in assisting with closing the achievement gap with minorities in our educational system here in Ohio. I own my own company, and I'm contracted through various schools and districts, and I provide a wide variety of services ranging from coaching teachers to providing tutoring services to students and assisting students with the transition from elementary school to middle school to high school, and of course, high school to college. Love the university. Today I'm sporting my Sigma Sigma shirt to show my school spirit. And a tidbit that I want to add is I was very disappointed that I did not get a chance to watch the UC game due to its postponement this past Saturday. So that's who I am.
Great, thanks, Larry. Sean, would you like to go next?
Absolutely. Hey, everybody. I'm Sean Lee, a 2009 grad at the College of Business. UC's kind of played a pivotal role. So for me, I was a first-generation college student, and UC was kind of the best option to allow me to kind of go to school and go the College of Business route. Was pretty involved when I was there, did things through my fraternity and through student government, and was a Sigma Sigma with Larry. So good to see you again, Larry. And since UC, I think that network's played a critical role. I was able to spend about a decade at Procter & Gamble, mainly from the network that I had at UC that enabled me to meet the right people there, to be able to interview and kind of get coached through their hiring process. And from there, left and was the VP of e-commerce for a private equity-backed company, and now leading the agency in Cincinnati as their CMO called Amify, and we have about 24 employees. And we work with large brands like P&G brands and small and medium-sized businesses to help them run their Amazon business. So happy to be here today and excited to take some questions.
Thanks, Sean. Jen, would you like to go next?
Sure. Hi, I'm Jenn Schuster. I'm a '08 graduate of the Lindner College of Business in the Honors Plus program. I have a dual degree in accounting and finance, and then I stayed on a few more quarters and got my master's in accounting in '09. I started actually co-oping at Cincinnati Children's Hospital and stayed there for 12 years and worked all throughout their finance and internal audit functions. My last role there was a business director of our the critical care units. And about 4 years ago, I moved over to Christ Hospital, where I'm currently the executive director of finance for the Christ Hospital physicians. So I manage our 450 employed providers, about 1,500 staff that support those providers. And then my team is made up of about 100 people that do the finance function. So analytics, billing, coding, all the revenue cycle pieces of the physician division of the hospital.
Thanks, Jen. Shantia?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Shantia Pearson. I'm a 2008 grad from I have my bachelor's in criminal justice. I did go to UC for my master's. I mean, to Xavier for my master's, though. But UC really paved the way for me. I came from the inner city, and I thought that UC was unattainable, but it was very welcoming, especially with the African American Studies Department and student engagement there. So that was really beneficial up there as I navigated that space. But now I did internship when I was at CJ with the Cincinnati Police Department. And subsequently, I'm working for them now. And it's always an honor to be engaged with students from UC through the CJ program who come to the job. Some stay, some don't. It's always an opportunity to be able to mentor them to see if policing is what they want or some line of this work. Since I've been at the police department, though, I am the lieutenant currently of Second Relief down in District 1. I'm probably one of the youngest lieutenants they've ever promoted. And it comes with its challenges. But nonetheless, since I've been here, I've been in District 3, District 4, District 5, the Internal Investigations Unit, our Planning and Development section as a research analyst and policy changer, and our Emergency Communications Center. And before being promoted to lieutenant, I was down at our training academy, and that was the most beneficial and rewarding assignment that I had. I was down there 3 years, and now I'm a lieutenant. With the current work that I do right now, commanding and controlling relief, I actually have an opportunity to touch the hearts and the minds of the people who go out here and patrol every day, but I also am actively engaged with several community leaders and some grassroots organizations in this social justice. I don't like the word fight, but in our fight to reconcile unity in America, I actually consult and help out with some of the leaders in the communities. And that's me. And I'll be starting my own business, so I'm just trying to figure out where. Most people wait until they're retired to go out, and I want to focus on having courageous conversations. So it's to create change.
Great, thank you all. We're excited to have all of you here with us today. I'll get started with asking the first question. So since you all were graduating during the last economic recession, did the state of the economy affect your plans after college? If so, how, and how did you adjust to those changes?
I'm happy to jump in. Yeah, it was definitely tough, and I'm sure everybody on here remembers back in 08, 09, like the job market was pretty dried up. There weren't a ton of prospects out there. So I think UC kind of had a little bit of a leg up just given the co-op program and the network that it has. So a lot of people who had co-op places had already kind of auditioned, so to speak, and came out with good jobs. For me, I was fortunate that I ultimately ended up at Procter & Gamble. I had been trying to get in there. They had frozen their hiring for a while. So I took the best job available to me coming out of the College of Business. So I was in a bank trainee program for PNC for about probably 9 to 12 months before the hiring freeze at Procter & Gamble ended, and I was able to ultimately get on with them. But I think it was certainly challenging. And at the time, my perspective was take the best thing available and network and keep all your options open. And I think the alumni network and the people of UC really helped keep doors open. So networking is kind of key through these times. And you can take a job and know it's not going to be your forever job, would be my advice.
I also want to tack on that. I remember I was heavily debating going right back to school after I graduated because I didn't know. Um, Even in a field like education, where you're going to find a job. Just as Sean has stated, um, looking at what options were best. In my program, we did have to teach for an entire year before we graduated, but districts were undergoing budgetary cuts, and classrooms were like packing the students in, so we didn't want to be in an oversized class as a first year teacher because it's already rough enough being a first year instructor. And I heavily contemplated going right back to school and getting a master's. But one of the things that I kind of continue to repeat to myself is, I had to be creative, like figure out creative ways to network or figure out creative ways to do things that go along with my degree so that, I could supplement some income. I think that was one of the years where healthcare was up in the air, and I remember I needed a car, and it was a lot going on. And I remember that's when I started saying I might have to work a job and have a side hustle just to kind of like make ends meet. And if I had to say anything, that's one of the skills that I kind of learned on top of networking is just how to make sure that you're constantly doing something that's constructive toward setting up a goal because it's not like you can just go get a degree and then get a job and then that like Sean said, you're going to stay with that job forever. You have to constantly figure out creative ways to supplement income or to continue to work your craft so that you can bring more money in to offset bills, because I think everything kind of went up at that time.
Yeah, for me, I was in a little bit of a different situation. So, summer of 2007, I actually received an offer. So it was before my senior year of college. I received a full-time offer with Children's and accepted it, before I was graduating. And then the economy, right as I was graduating, the economy really shifted. So I was lucky that I'm in an industry in healthcare that while we certainly have our challenges and, we've learned that with the COVID pandemic right now, healthcare is always going to be here. And so it was a little bit more stable than some of the other industries. And they certainly slowed down hiring in the healthcare industry, but you can't freeze hiring per se in healthcare. So I was able to start in 2008. Once I graduated, I also continued getting my master's while I was working at Children's because I kind of saw it, knowing with the economy, yes, I had a job, but wanted to also continuing my education. So I got my master's in 2009, and then luckily have been able to stay in healthcare. I think one of the things I would say is I didn't go into finance and accounting to be in healthcare. I certainly didn't think that's the route it would take, but sometimes you have to look at what your degree is and think, how can I use it maybe in an industry that's not what I once intended, but you can still use your knowledge. And I've learned so much about finance and accounting in a different way, other than just, the TIA charts and, doing kind of public accounting. Healthcare has a different way to do it, but it's something I've really found a passion for. So I think I would encourage you to think outside the box a little bit too, and think, what could I do with my degree, maybe in an industry that I haven't considered before?
For me, I was actually blessed. I had already had a job where no matter what goes on, I don't lose it. But however, I did have the opportunity of working with the community. People were losing their homes. Crime rates went up, especially sometimes among some communities regarding theft. And just like with the COVID pandemic, people were, when their finances change, you're in the house with each other. And so it tends to increase domestic violence. So for me, I was actually on patrol at the time. And so just seeing how the community responded, I actually seen a lot more coming together, but I think we breeded our generation of playing it safe financially and not necessarily risking ourselves. And I could be wrong, but that's just what I seen when I was going out, was people start to play it safe and find jobs where they were less likely to be laid off or unemployed. And I can tell you now, with the generation now, I really think it's beautiful how they're taking risks on themselves and they're starting businesses, and they're thriving and they're thinking of other ways to survive and come together. So for me, I was personally safe, but I did see the impact that it had on the world, and it was scary at first.
Great, thank you. Our next question, do you see similarities in the market and society happening today in 2020 as we're going on back then? Obviously, the situation is a little bit different and it's not nearly as bad as it was back then, but do you all see any similarities?
It was interesting. I think Jennifer had mentioned she had just moved into another home. I was going to say, I think the housing market, I think I remember, if I'm not mistaken, I remember it was like really easy to like get approved for a home loan around the time we were graduating, because that's another thing I was contemplating. Like, should I just buy a car? Should I try to get a house? And I see that same pattern coming around again. I know that probably will be I know like a lot of graduates aren't thinking, hey, I got to buy a house, but you know that long-term decision, it might benefit to be done earlier as opposed to later, because honestly it's a great return on the investment. So I think that aspect of the economy is kind of like present today, like it was when we graduated. As far as the job market goes, I would say that they have the advantage because more and more people are going into business for themselves. And there's a ton of money out here for people who want to try, or they have relief funds that people can take advantage of as long as they have their business going. So, I think they have the upper hand in that. I don't remember that much being out when we graduated, or I just was focused on trying to find a job. But I will say a lot more people are thinking differently now. So that aspect is kind of this. Well, I say this, the home ownership aspect is definitely similar.
Yeah, I mean, I actually bought a home right out of college during all of that, in part because there was a lot of, I mean, I was blessed to have a scholarship, so I didn't, graduate with a debt. But I will say it was interesting because back then the lenders that's when we got in trouble, with the lenders, because they were lending people more money than they ever should have. And what happens is about 2 to 3 years after all of that, then people start foreclosing and they're losing their homes. And so you have to really be smart. And, I remember when I got pre-approved for my loan, I was like, did you run my numbers correctly? I can't possibly, afford all of that. And I think that was something that, I made a decision based on what I knew my financials to be. But now, 11 years later, Larry is right. I just moved yesterday, so I'm sitting in my new home right now. And that investment was such a smart decision I made right out of college, because I'm making a considerable, profit now. And while I didn't go into doing it for that, those are ways to think of things too, of like, the sooner you can invest early on in your life, it makes it so much easier, later down the road. So many college students, I think, were not really told about, retirement funds and different ways to invest and setting up those accounts. And I really encourage everyone to do that, because the more you put away now, I tried to live very kind of below my means and frugally when I first got out of college, because I don't want to work till I'm 65. I want to retire early, start businesses, do different things, and have that luxury. And so I would encourage you guys to do that too, even in a down economy. The more you can kind of put aside, and yes, you have to prioritize, you have to take care of your immediate needs, but the more you can do with, less when those times, it will really give you a big return in the future.
Yeah, I kind of echo all the sentiments. I think the things that are slightly different is if you look at the last recession, it was very much like kind of old business models getting disrupted or accelerated. Banks weren't lending, so credit kind of dried up. I haven't seen, like from a credit standpoint, a lot of money drying up. It's actually quite frankly pretty easy to get loans right now, whether it's business or home loans. So I think that's a little bit different, but I think you're seeing kind of the hospitality market take a huge hit right now, and some old business models like retail and brick and mortar, things like that, completely get disrupted. So I'd say as you are looking for jobs, pick industries that are going to be growing 5, 10, 15 years from now, and avoid industries that may not make it out of this, because I think you could put yourself at some risk. But echo the sentiment on trying to live below your means, especially as you're getting out and making money for the first time. I had some student loan debt, and I think my first year and a half, I kind of lived like I was a college student still, like eating Hot Pockets for dinner and things like that, and just taking my salary and trying to pay down my student loan debt. And looking back, that was probably one of the best decisions I could have made, because it opened up a ton of options because I wasn't saddled with a ton of debt.
Okay, great. Let's see. Our next question. Did you pivot your interest to a market that would be more in demand due to the crisis? So ideally, when you are in college and graduating, you have an idea about what you're going to do and what that first job is going to be like. Did you have to pivot that interest of yours to be able to find a job in the job market?
I would say I definitely took a job that was available, the best one available that I kind of mentioned earlier. And then when I kind of landed where I wanted to at P&G in marketing, I kind of had, I think maybe the recession or the economic downturn had kind of scarred me. So naturally, I kind of gravitated towards like future growth areas. So I kind of built my career around digital marketing and e-commerce, and got really into it and went deep before everybody was taking it seriously. So even now at Amify, we're an agency that supports people selling on Amazon, which has exploded, especially through the pandemic. So maybe it was a reactionary thing, but I really gravitated towards where's the future heading and how can I build a deep and wide skill set in where the puck is heading, so that I don't set myself up for building a skill set in a dying industry or a dying trade.
And I'm going to agree with that. One of our motivations was to go into a field where there was a lack of representation of African Americans. So there weren't a lot of. I knew that there wouldn't be a lot of African American male math or science teachers. So that's why I actually went into those fields. And I think STEM was like starting to pick up. Now it's blown, and it actually added arts to the equation as well. So, when these people talk industry or these people talk experience, or they need somebody to come in and kind of give viewpoints or consult, I put myself right in the middle of that conversation, which was wise. One of the things that I wouldn't recommend, or one of the things that would have hindered me, is if I would have did education without one of those areas of a math or a science, because then it would have hindered me. A lot of people, when they get into teaching English or reading or history, they kind of stay there forever, so, and with science changing, I knew that'd be a conversation starter to any principal or any school district.
I didn't have to pivot during the Great Recession. Like I said, I picked a job that was safe, but I'm having to pivot now. As a public once as our expectations have changed, and the way we do business and the way we do work, I have to pivot the way I lead and pivot the way I serve the community. And so, although I didn't have to take that chance then I have to take it now. And just like Larry, be willing to have a seat at the table to have those courageous conversations, because the duality of where I sit, being an African American female, growing up poor and impoverished, and then having to look inside the thin blue line, to actually have compassion and understanding for my job, but also for my white coworkers, see that it extends beyond race and it's bigger than racism, and seeing how we can reconcile unity. So right now I had to pivot to find a way to use my voice for society and for the greater good. And like I said before, it's going to be a challenge because I still have 12 years here. I can retire in 6, but I won't have the age because I started so young. So that's the cool part about starting a career young. If any of you are young, like I can literally walk away at 43, but I'm not going to. But just having the opportunity to take the times and use it for whatever job market that you're in, to shift with the times, especially if it's something you're passionate about, which unity I'm very passionate about. I'm sorry, and one more thing. Don't just look at your professional experiences, look at your personal experience too, you guys. There's things that you went through in your life right now that are relevant. We're older And so we don't have your purview of the world. And so if there's an opportunity for you to share your purview, your vision, and what you feel like the direction that your particular job field should be headed, also learn how to use your personal skills to your professional advantage, because that's what I'm doing here. And it could actually be a selling point for you as well and add some value.
Great, thank you all. Our next question, I know you each have kind of touched on advice you would give to young alumni and new grads right now, but what was the best piece of advice you were given while you were graduating college and entering this next chapter of your life in a time of uncertainty?
I remember I got I don't know, randomly, with my first check, I got a life insurance policy, and I vowed that I would not obtain a credit card like for the first couple years with my first job. I think that was probably the best thing that I could have did. I wish today I wish I would have followed Sean's example and lived like I still was a college student. I ate like I was a college student, but but I didn't pay off my student loans like directly after I graduated. And that, like, the thing is that time just creeps up on you, and that interest, like, you're paying more every day. So it's like, you might pay like maybe 30 cents on this loan or 60 cents on that loan, or maybe even $1 a day on that loan. But over the span of years, that it's a killer. You'll be looking at your statement saying, I only took out 5,000. I'm paying back like 8,000. So yeah, that's the advice that I followed, and then that's the advice that I also would give. Pay those things back. If you're going to do those programs for forgiveness, make sure you read every single read all the qualifications and stipulations, because I found that through other colleagues, they try to stick you in the end. When it's time for them to forgive, they say, oh, well, you didn't do this or you didn't sign that. So yeah, that's what I would do.
Yeah, for me, it wasn't necessarily advice right when I was graduating. We actually, when I traveled abroad over to Europe, we did a P&G visit, and one of the executives there gave really great advice saying, when you get comfortable, it's time for a change. And I didn't really appreciate it right at that moment, but it always stuck with me. And I think what he was really saying is that I think we get complacent sometimes when we get really comfortable and you get into a routine. And I know for me at Children's, it got to the point where I felt like I could do my job. I was on autopilot sometimes, and I was great at my job. It just was that I wasn't really being challenged every day. And so when I moved over to Christ, change is hard, but it was good. I mean, the first 3 months, it really kind of rocked my world a little bit because it was so different and it just wasn't the comfort zone I was used to. But I've grown so much in these last 4 years because I've been challenged every day and because I didn't know and I had to learn new things. And so I would say too, when you start feeling comfortable, kind of question it a little bit and say, maybe I should do something else, or challenge yourself. Doesn't mean you have to change your job, but challenge yourself to go learn something else. I challenge my team every day. We can learn something every day, and you should continue to keep learning and stuff. So that was really great advice, and I've always held on to that.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I actually had similar advice to Jenn's, and I think it's always served me well. Like, every time I get comfortable, I look for a change or something to push me personally and professionally, and it's always ended up working out for the better. I think the other thing is, especially as you're a new young professional in the workforce, something that I always struggled with was always thinking that there was somebody in the room with more experience or smarter than me, or that I should look to. And you would be shocked. Like, people who have been in the industry for 20 years may be looking to you as the expert because you're more in touch with your generation or business trends, or you have a fresh or new perspective. And I'd say always have an opinion. Don't feel like you have to defer to somebody else. Be respectful, but have a point of view or have an opinion. It may not be the right one, or they may not agree with it, but I think if you do it tactfully, people always appreciate somebody who brings a perspective, has an opinion that's backed up by data or some sort of rationale. And I found once I started voicing my opinion and kind of got over that mental hurdle, I was able to advance and kind of grow professionally and gain respect of people who had been there for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. Because at the end of the day, people want smart people working in the roles, and it doesn't really matter your age or experience. You can add value.
For me, mine was let them tell you no, and then ask why if they do. Growing up, um, uh, systematic racism was taught differently in my home. And it was taught that I don't care what's in front of you, you face it and you take risks. And so the biggest thing right now is that don't think that you can't go for a particular job. Don't think that you can't do something. Try it. Try it. And if you get a no, always ask why. Be unafraid to ask why, because it could grow you. You can learn something new. And every challenge is just an opportunity to just grow. That's all it is. And so my biggest thing was let them tell you no. I never told myself, no, I can't do that because, no, I can't do that because. It's like, no, I can do that because I'm going to try to do that because every failure, I believe in failing your way to success. Like, because you just know not to do that mistake again, or you know not to try that way again. And you become better at your craft and your skills and who you are. So my best advice was let people tell you no. Don't ever tell yourself no, like ever. Just go for it and try it and put your best foot forward and learn from it if it doesn't work out. And if it does, it's even better.
That was great advice. Thank you all. One other question is, how have each of you stayed connected to the university since graduating?
I the University of Cincinnati, out of the College of Education, they have an upward bound program for high school students that take classes over the summer. For the last 3 years, I've taught the math or the science or the ACT section of that course or that program. And I'm actually back at the university. I'm working on a master's in curriculum instruction in math, and my undergrad was in science. So arguing with all the math people about why this is really science and trying to help them understand that we're not really saying two different things. We're saying the same thing. But I constantly reach out to alums. I spoke when they had transition of the dean's office, and more people got appointed. I constantly reached out and speak to them regularly about what was the change looking like, and actually talked myself into going back to school because some of the questions that I were asking, they actually invited me and said, well, why don't you come study it for yourself and and see and find out an answer. So constantly reaching out. Then I have various organizations that I actually still have ties to. I pledge Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated at the University of Cincinnati, so I'm constantly talking to our neophytes. I have Sig brothers, Metro brothers, Collegiate 100 brothers, Phi Rho Chi brothers. I'm always trying to come back. Quick plug, shamelessly, I was mad that homecoming did not happen, but I will be ready for next year. So I always feel connected to the university as long as I'm in the city.
Yeah, so I had the privilege of serving on the UC Alumni Association board for many years. I think it was almost 8 years after I graduated. First kind of being on the committees, and then I actually sat on the board for a while. Worked closely with the YP committee and also some of our program development work. So I did that for 8 years. I'm still really connected with the Honors Plus program. So sat on their advisory board for a little while. I often do a lot of these types of panels. So in Honors Plus, they like to bring in different panels for finance or accounting or different specialties. So I've done some of those. Actually, the dean recently has reached out and is kind of getting a panel of us together to kind of discuss just the Lindner College of Business and honors programs in general. So I've been working with the Lindner Women in Business as well. And then currently I'm on the UC Alumni Association Uncorked Committee, which is Lauren helps us with that. So we host an event every month with different meals and wine pairings and beer and like different types of things, just as a social aspect, and pivoted quickly during COVID and are trying to do those things virtually. So I am very, connected. I started a endowment and scholarship fund in my family's name just because they gave me so much and the university gave me so much. So I try to give back financially where I can as well. But pretty much if anything they ask with UC, I typically say yes if I can. So I try to stay really connected. I really find it enjoyable to reach out with the students too. I know when I was a student, I enjoy talking to alumni and networking. And so I try to be that resource for the students as well. And I always learn so much for the students. We hire co-op students. I hired them at Children's and I hire them now at Christ. And I always say today, those kids are so much smarter than I was back then. It's fascinating, you know, how much they've grown and everything, but it's great opportunity and they teach me so much every day.
Yeah, I would say, I try to give back. I'd say in my 20s, I had a lot more time before I had a daughter. I would sit on different boards. I led, when I was at P&G, I led our recruiting effort. So did all the outreach with the College of Business, would coach kids through the process, which is a ton of fun. I got to meet a lot of great people that way. But mainly my giving back now is through College of Business. I sit on panels like this. I'll often go back to like MBA panels. Right now, I think the freshman business group is doing a SWOT analysis on my company and helping kind of give back by participating in those classes. But a lot of my friends, lifelong friends, are all UC graduates. So we stay really connected. Homecoming's obviously great, but I'm still local, so big advocate of sports. Pre-pandemic, went to all the basketball games and football games and would run into great alumni and current students there. So try to stay around as much as possible and give back with the time that I have, which is limited now with the family, but hopefully can ramp that up in the future.
So for me, I have taught at the police academy, at UC's police academy up at Claremont, and that was always rewarding. And then I'm always serving as a panelist and a speaker. I'll give a little bit every year to the Alumni Association. I like him. I also participate in homecoming and I still make connections. I wasn't the traditional student because I was a cop, so I didn't get to turn up like everybody else did because everybody was kind of leery, like she's the police. I don't know if I can hang with her. But I still established some great connections. I really enjoy mentoring the kids that come through the police department who attend UC. I had one student, she actually, she just graduated the last class, but after talking to me, she moved to Philadelphia to try to do something else. And then I talked to her while she was there, and then to see her come back and see her full circle and her experiences is pretty rewarding, just to see how the kids that you mentor actually turn out and make change. Right now, though, I am banking on using the Office of Research so that I can get some of the data to help support some of the ideas that I have for change and also support why things need to be changed. So I'll be reaching out to the Office of Research just to see how to either partner with them and make sure I get some of their information and data moving forward so that I can have these courageous conversations in my business. So UC is always gonna be a part of my heart, though. I know I switched and went to Xavier, but I'm still UC at heart.
Thank you all so much. Those were all of the questions that we had prior to the event starting. I wanted to open it up for any of the attendees on the call. If you all have any questions, you can use the chat box or feel free to unmute yourself to ask a question.
Hey, how's it going? My name's Carl. I'm a fifth year mechanical engineering student right now. Pretty heavily involved with student government. And I think one of the things that just like when I think about post-grad that is most concerning is figuring out what you all were talking about with like investment and like planning for when you're 60, when you're like 30 years old, 20 years old. So I guess what resources did you use, whether those were UC related or not, to kind of figure that out?
Yeah, I think that was a dope question, Carl. Really, like I said, being able to retire at 43, I just started talking to old people that's about to go out the door. Like, it's so just go see a financial advisor, just to see. For me, I'm in a job where I get a pension, right? But I'm also had to make my own financial investments, and so it really looks like I think what I can't think of his name. The guy said where he said live below your means. Like as long as you could do that, do that. But right before you graduate, like I would just go talk to somebody to start making those investments now and not wait. And I know it's scary because people say stock market, investments, portfolios, pensions, la la la. Basically, you need to just determine what your life is going to look like at 60. Like for me, I own a house, I own 2 cars, and so it helps determine like how much money you need when you get to that age. But if you start that nest egg the moment you walk out the door to graduate, like it just makes your career so much for me, it made it so much more fulfilling because I wasn't necessarily concerned for my financial future. So I was able to be creative because I wasn't as stressed. I don't know how to be an entrepreneur. Kudos to all you beautiful people who are on here that can be entrepreneurs. That is not my personality. So before you graduate and before you take on anything, learn about what you probably want your life to be like at 60, how much money you could stow away, because you could definitely stow away a lot less now because you have a long time for it to grow.
Yeah, I would say too, you don't have to do it all at once. You can kind of phase it too. I mean, I think it's overwhelming when you first come out of college. So, one of the things I would say is most companies have either a 401k or 403b or different retirement programs. Go ahead and put money in your paycheck. So, my advisor is always like, put the maximum of, the 10% or whatever you can max out to, because for me, like, you don't see that. That immediately comes out of your paycheck and it's never money that you see. And so you learn to live on what paycheck you are receiving. So I would encourage any program you go into, definitely do some type of investment in your retirement. We have some really amazing financial advisors and financial people that are UC grads that are, local here and stuff. And I know would love to, help and stuff. And certainly we can connect you with some of those people, but it's been really, I have a finance and accounting degree. I could do all of it myself, but I rely on someone else to do it because it's not my day to day. I have a day to day job and I might not be looking at all of that. And so I work with a financial advisor and we set goals. And so, I take money out of each paycheck. I, then try to put things in each quarter, or if I get a bonus at work, I try to put money aside but we just make goals. And he really helps me sit down and say, okay, what are you trying to achieve? And I've said, I want to retire sometime in my 50s where I'm able to then go do things and enjoy life. And what does that mean? It means I have to make different decisions today, but that's something I'm willing to do. But he also helps me when there's something I want to enjoy and celebrate now. So I love to travel. I'm missing that incredibly during these COVID months. And so that is something that I do still splurge on and invest in because it's something that is kind of my, sanctuary to get away from things. So I think you just have to make decisions and prioritize. And you don't have to do it all at once. But you'll be so much better. I'm in my mid 30s. And when I look at my investments in my portfolio, I'm in really good shape because I've made those decisions early on in my life. So.
Yeah, echo all that. I think number one, like look at your 401k or whatever they offer wherever you start your first job. Oftentimes companies will match. So they'll match 4%, 5%, which is essentially free money that you can take advantage of. So if you just start tucking that away or have things even auto transferred out into like just a simple investment fund that just like buys the S&P 500 index, you don't have to get complicated with it. Just do that and then live off the money that's remaining. And after a while, it just becomes automatic and you don't even think about that money while it's growing in the background, which I think is great. I think the other thing too is don't go and do something silly or buy something flashy when you get your first paycheck. Like you probably don't need to go have a $700 a month car payment, like go buy a used car or do something like that and make smart choices there. I see a lot of people kind of get excited because they now have money and then go buy something that they probably don't need at that age.
One of the things that I discovered, it took me till I was 30 to understand this, is the College of Business people, I'm going to generalize you all for a second. They speak finances freely. So if you just kind of hang around and listen to some of their conversations, you start to ask yourself, why do they say things like that? And then you ask them why, and you basically get free advice. What I did was I befriended a person. We actually had a lot in common, but he studied finances at the Northern Kentucky University. and he helped me save a ton of stuff. But this was stuff that he learned, and I didn't learn this. I wasn't trained in it because I was training for education. But he helped make sense of so many things. And then I want to echo what Shauna says: do not buy a car when you graduate. It is like one of the dumbest investments. I had the car that I bought when I graduated. I still own it today. At first, I thought it was the greatest thing on the planet. Then I had kids, and they completely tear up the back seat of the car. So I'm just gonna be honest with you. Wait until like you close to retirement, where it's just you and that you can drive your own vehicle to actually enjoy it when you're in that financial place. And again, just understand this. You really don't need, like, it's gonna be great to have it for like the first month, but after that, it's like, why am I paying so much for just to ride around? When the car that you probably had in college worked fine. So I echo that.
Thank you all for the tips.
Are there any other questions? We just got a question in the chat from Noah. He's asking, what is something that you regret not knowing, either after graduation or before?
That's a hard one. So for me, I don't typically like regret things because I think everything is a life lesson and it kind of teaches you something. I think what I wish I would have like maybe paid more attention to, not necessarily not knowing, but the transition from college to what we call the real life or working world is hard because in college you're constantly involved in different social aspects or clubs or you're doing school. You kind of get into this routine, but it's very social, if you will, for many people. And so when you go off and whether you're, living on your own in an apartment or living with roommates and going to a job, it's a very different normal. And so you have to kind of get back into a routine of like, you're not seeing your friends every day. You start becoming, one with like your coworkers, but you're younger and typically, depending on the company you go into, like, not all companies have a YP department or something like that you got to kind of join in. And for me, I was the youngest person by far. And when I started at Children's, and it takes a little bit of time for, I think, older, people and generations to kind of trust that you know what you're doing or kind of learn from you and stuff. And so it's okay to be uncomfortable when you first get out into the real world. And it was a big transition for me. I took that for granted. I thought it was like, oh, I'll be fine. I've been co-oping. I know how to work and stuff. And it was a shock, I think, to my system, just saying, oh, I don't see my friends every day. I don't do this. I'm not going to see them. And so I would just say that allow yourself a little bit of that grace period to get comfortable in your new, routine and your new normal, and find time though for yourself still. I probably made the mistake of going too full into work. I don't regret it, but I just was like, okay, this is my new norm, put everything into work. And so I probably didn't pay as much time to my friends and family in my 20s as much because I was just career, and save time for yourself because you can burn out. I started burning out pretty early in my 30s with some stuff, and that I look back on it, and it was because of those decisions. And so I don't regret it. I learned from it. But if I were you, I would always save time for yourself so that you can be your best version of yourself for others as well.
Yeah, I would say set boundaries. I think the best advice I got when I was at P&G is like the company will take as much of you as you'll give it. So you have to be the one that sets those boundaries. If you're not going to work at night or email after a certain hour, set those boundaries and kind of make those clear. If you're not one that works on the weekend, set those boundaries. I was usually pretty clear with people on what my boundaries were, and it helped me avoid some burnout. And I never found that it really hurt me as long as I was kind of clear about what you're going to get from me when I'm present versus when I take time for myself.
For me, I'm all about inclusion. So the only thing I regretted was not getting to know people outside of my own purview of interest. You only have so many hours in a day, I get it, and you only have so much time throughout your life. But just now, as I step into it, just YouTube has been a blessing. Books were the blessing before. YouTube has been a blessing now. And so just finding opportunities so that I can engage people in a different way. So for me, it was like I was in my bubble in college. I was a cop. I was worried about what social activities I can participate in. After being a cop, I just wanted to know how to be a cop, like, and I regret just not knowing how vast and beautiful the world is, and just getting to know people and processes and things outside of what I'm focused on, which brings value to your organization, to whoever you work for, to your own business.
I'm trying to go through. I think a lot of the things that I wish I would have did differently was, it's not many. One of the things that I kind of like constantly remind myself is I wish I would have did a lot more when I was younger, like travel, especially when I graduated. I got really focused. And then our profession doesn't take us out of the country or out of the city much outside of an educational conference. My wife and I, we talk about how we wish we would have went to more places before we had kids and things like that. That would probably be the only thing, because when you are an undergrad, I can remember my senior year, we just wanted to go. So we just picked up and left. And it was no accountability. We had to check in with anybody. We just got up and left. Now, if we got to leave, we got to take so many things in consideration just to even consider, are we going to go or not? So I would say, while you got it, and that was probably one of the reasons why I was sad when I graduated, I was like, this is not going to be the same. But while you still got the time and the flexibility, do everything that you want to do now, because your job is constantly going to be a factor. I think now it's to the point where people are watching what you do on social media. So, you can't even go off and do what you want to do and expect not to find out about it at work. So just keep those things in mind.
Yeah, I would echo what Larry says. I've never went on a trip that I regretted going on, even if it was kind of my advice, even if it costs a little bit more money to go on that trip. Like, I always look fondly back on those memories. And now that we're in different life stages and have kids, like I definitely cherish those trips and look forward to when I'm hopefully retired and can do some more of that in the future.
Definitely. Well, we're quickly approaching 12:30. We have about 5 minutes left. So if there's one more question, we can go ahead and take that.
If it's okay, I'd like to ask another one.
Yeah, absolutely.
So in like a book that I've been reading about kind of like professional development, young careers and stuff, they talk a lot about like extracurriculars for like the adult life. And like one of you mentioned, you're pretty involved in college, you get to meet these great groups. Like you also have the opportunity to meet people from around the world, different cultures, different backgrounds. And it's really easy to do that in the college setting. And like when I think about post grad life, I'm trying to think about how I'm going to continue to like grow and meeting people from different backgrounds, different experiences, and continue to do that. So, any advice that you all have as to kind of continue that growth that you see so much in college as a professional?
Join professional organizations, and take leadership courses. I've taken leadership courses, like I was in the military too, but just leadership courses, just any professional development courses outside of your organization. A lot of organizations that you work for allow you to travel to hone your skills. And so you'll meet people in other cities and states and across the world to travel. And so there's still those as adults, our social circles are still there, but it's just called organizations, and just, alumni association. So just take an opportunity to join boards or to go to some type of training outside of your normal purview, and you'll still have an opportunity to meet and engage people. That's how I do it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think if there's anything you're particularly passionate about, if it's like a nonprofit, like I'm involved in Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation. I'm on the board there, and that's kind of where I pour my extracurricular into. And I've met a ton of fantastic people of all ages through that. If there's something that you particularly care about or a cause, all those nonprofits are looking for great volunteers that can dedicate their time, talent, and resources to it.
Yeah, I would say too, most companies have organizations or different groups to get involved in too. So that's an easy one. Just when you get started at work, get involved in some of those things. I think it's very popular now that most companies have like a YP group just, to get involved in. And then you learn a lot when you're in the workforce. I mean, just working with different groups of people and diverse groups of people, like take every opportunity to learn from everyone you work with. We're lucky enough to have different like societies and memberships and organizations that we can join. But I find, honestly, I learn so much and grow so much just with the people I work with, because I work with different people every single day. And so I take that opportunity to really see that as an opportunity for them to teach me their world. And that has been a blessing, I think, of being in the workforce, is that you really have an opportunity to work with a diverse group of people every single day if you take that opportunity.
Awesome. Thanks.
Great. Well, thank you all so much for joining us this morning. We really appreciate you being here with us. And thank you to our 4 panelists, Jenn, Sean, Shantia, and Larry. I think that this was a great panel with a lot of insightful advice and information. To everyone who attended this event, a recording will be sent out to all of you in an email that'll probably go out next week sometime. Again, thank you for attending, and thank you to all of our panelists for taking the time out of your day to be here with us.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks.